If you are someone who is able to access enough food to be obese or morbidly obese, you have privilege.
Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Katie, and for those of you who don't know me, I used to weigh 360 pounds, and I've lost 180 pounds and kept it off for years now. And on this channel we will discuss weight loss, weight maintenance, nonsense I see online about body positivity and fat acceptance, my experiences with all of that, and well, anything else I feel like talking about. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below, and let's get into today's video. So today I have a TikTok from a creator who claims that obesity is a privilege, as well as several responses to that. So I figure we can go ahead and watch these together and I'll give you my reaction along the way.
I have a hot take for you. If you are someone who is able to access enough food to be obese or morbidly obese, you have privilege. I know, that's probably a tough concept to understand, but you have privilege, especially over people that can't even afford food, okay? If you have the ability to eat in excess of your normal caloric intake, to the point where you're able to maintain an extremely high body weight, you have a lot of privilege to be able to do that compared to people that literally cannot eat. I'm not saying this to be mean. I just think that it's important that we get a little perspective on where we're at and actually how put down we are by society, because I don't think a lot of people who are overweight, like myself, think about the fact that we have a lot of privilege to be able to even be overweight. That's not a bad thing. It just is. I'm not saying this to offend anyone. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of perspective. So, I hope this helps. Have a good day.
Okay, and she's saying that in order to become obese or morbidly obese, you have to access enough food in order to do that. And I definitely agree with that. And then she says that in order to do that, that is a privilege. And I gotta say, I do agree with her on that point, that in order to have enough calories to become obese or morbidly obese and then sustain that weight, that's going to take a fair amount of food for most people. And I know I have talked previously on this channel about what it took for me to get to 360 pounds and how I also had BED along with that. But I don't believe I walked through an entire day of eating and what that looked like on a routine basis for me when I was at my heaviest or when I was on my way to my heaviest. So just for context, I was working at a local utility and a call center, which meant I was chained to my desk all 40 hours of my work week. So there was no getting up and moving around. I literally had to sit there and take phone calls all day. So there was already minimal physical activity at my job. There was admittedly no physical activity or very minimal physical activity when I was at home. So let me just go ahead and run you through what my day would have looked like back then. So we'll just say for this example that I was working one of my shifts that I normally worked, which was 7:30 to 4. So I would have left in the morning without any breakfast and just left maybe with a lunch to take with me, but a lot of times maybe not. And then when I got to work, I would tell myself that I never ate breakfast and I wasn't hungry. But by about 8:30, 9 o'clock, whenever my first break hit, I would head to the break room where I would get a 20-ounce bottle of pop. I would get usually a bag of chips and then maybe a candy bar. It was always something sweet and something salty from the vending machines, just depending on what they had. Never anything of any nutritive value. Just keep that in mind. So then next we're going to go to lunch. And at lunch, we'll just say it was a day that I did bring my food with me. So I probably would have brought with me a microwave pizza or a microwave macaroni and cheese, maybe even a pack of Hot Pockets and eat both of them. And then of course I would need something to drink and water would not suffice. So I'd have to get another bottle of pop and then probably something salty and most assuredly something sweet. Again, all from the vending machines. And then I'd go back to my desk and I would finish eating that up. And then by the time my second break rolled around, let's just say that was around 2:30 or so, and I'd hit up the vending machines again and do my routine. A bottle of pop, something sweet, something salty. Now for those of you keeping track, that's already 60 ounces of pop. 60 ounces of pop, and I haven't even left work yet. So then I left work at 4:30, and then I would tell myself that I wasn't sure when my ex-husband was going to be home from work, so I wasn't sure when dinner was going to be, so I probably need a snack, because despite all the calories I had just eaten, I was still very hungry because there was very little protein or any nutrition in any of the things that I'd eaten so far that day. So then I would swing through a drive-thru, and then I would tell myself that this was a snack to get like a medium-sized meal from a drive-thru. So a 1/4-pound cheeseburger, a medium fry, a medium drink. That was a snack. And then I would eat all of that, dispose of the contents as soon as I got home, and then as soon as my ex-husband would get home from work, whenever that was, whether that was a half hour, an hour, 2 hours later, well, now it's time for dinner, and I couldn't be bothered to cook because I had eaten nothing but junk food all day. I sat around all day and objectively felt like crap. So, well, let's either go hit up another drive-thru or maybe we'll order pizza. So we'll just assume it's pizza night tonight, and he would have ordered his pizza. I would have ordered my pizza. We probably would have ordered some sort of side like breadsticks or cheese sticks with that. And then we would have each gotten a 2-liter bottle of pop, so that way we could get different flavors of pop, right? And then I would eat a couple of breadsticks. I would drink a couple of glasses of pop. And then pretty much every night that we ordered pizza, I would eat the entire pizza. Whether it was in one sitting or I would eat the majority of it and then go back and finish off the last couple of slices later in the night. I ate pretty much the entire pizza every time we ordered pizza, plus the breadsticks, plus all the pop. And well, now I had dinner, but I haven't had dessert yet. And yes, we're still not done because there were so many nights that my ex-husband and I would go to the drugstore by our house and we would buy exorbitant amounts of candy, snacks, and this time better not get any pop. Let me go ahead and get a giant jug of chocolate milk. And I would drink the entire jug of chocolate milk. I would have a big old bag of something salty, maybe not chips this time because I'd already had 2 or 3 bags of those, but maybe some sort of cracker or just something salty, right? And now I would get candy. I might even get ice cream to go along with that. And whatever quantities they had on special for the candy, say it was like 3 for $2 or 4 for $5 or something like that. You always had to buy multiples to get the deal. And then whatever the deal was, that's what I would get. And then whatever I got, I ate the same night. And then just running these numbers through my head very quickly, I drank well over a gallon of pop every single day. I would often drink at least a quart of chocolate milk along with that. I would have 2, maybe 3 bags of chips, another salty snack. I would have an entire pizza. I would have a meal at a fast food restaurant as a snack. I would have a frozen dinner that was meant to feed maybe 2 or 3 people. I would eat that entire thing myself, in addition to all the other candy and every other snack that I had through there. That doesn't even account for special occasions like birthdays or Christmas. I mean, thinking about it now, it's really unhinged, the amount of food that I was able to put away in a single day and then wake up and do it all again the next day and do it all again the day after that. And so when I say that this is something that I did quite frequently, I followed that routine or something very similar to it, not just 4 out of 5 days out of the week, not just maybe 8 out of 10. We're talking 29 out of 30 days out of the entire month. And I saw how much all of that added up for me to do, because at that stage in my life, I ended up choosing food over literally every other necessity I had. So I had my electric shut off. I had a car repossessed. I got kicked out of an apartment for not paying the rent because I chose food. And I saw how food had eaten up all of that money. So I can definitely understand that at least what I was doing at that point, that was very much a privilege to be able to go out and spend that amount of money every single day on food, let alone the times that I would go to the grocery store and delude myself with the idea that I was going to cook at home that week. Yeah, I know how much money and how much food that took for me. Now, don't get me wrong, I am definitely not saying that everyone who got to 360 pounds or close to it did what I did to reach that size. I know that there are a multitude of ways it can happen. It can be a slow and gradual thing to where maybe you're putting on 10 pounds every year, and then that just starts compounding, and after 10 years you've put on 100 pounds and you don't really know where it came from. I understand that it definitely can come from the type of eating that I was doing. It can come from a combination of things. And so I understand that there's a lot of factors that are at play with this, but I do understand that no matter what the cause behind it, there's always an excess of calories that is going to cause that weight gain. So I understand, at least for me, it definitely was a privilege for me to get to that size. And I know from the outside looking in, nobody would really think that that was a privilege, because I did lose a lot of things in my life by choosing food over everything else. But I also understand that to eat the way that I did, and to go out to eat multiple times a day, or go to the vending machine multiple times a day, and just continually go spend money on food, that was a privilege to have that money to go do it, even if I had chosen that over other things. If I didn't have money in the account to go do it, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So I can understand and recognize that that was definitely a privilege.
You have a lot of privilege to be able to do that.
Okay, when I first saw this video, pardon me, I am very sick. But when I first saw this video, I was very, very mad at the creator and what she was saying. And if I made this video yesterday, it would be a very different video. But since then, I have not been able to stop thinking about what she said in the video. And so I have some thoughts now that I've calmed down. And my main message, overarchingly, is that this comment is fundamentally based in fat phobia and weight stigma. From a very, very tiny...
Okay, but how so? Because it seems like it was just an observation that in order to become obese or morbidly obese, you have to have access to the food that will allow you to become that way. It doesn't seem like that's based in fat phobia or weight stigma, but let's see what else she has to say.
Tiny age, we are all taught to hate fat people and fear being a fat person. We learn it typically from our family of origin, whether that is comments that the adults in our lives make around people in larger bodies around us, or comments they make about themselves. Our moms going on diets, saying terrible things about their own body. The adult women in our lives putting us on diets and telling us that our bodies need changed at a very young age. And then we go out into the world where so many of us, and I would venture to say most of us, have experienced similar things in our family of origin. And then we're surrounded by our peers who have also learned the exact same things. And not only them, but our teachers, our school nurses, our doctors.
Wow, I wonder why doctors and nurses might learn that obesity, or specifically morbid obesity, would be a bad thing. I wonder why they might be taught that. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but doctors are in school for quite a long time. I mean, there's a few doctors in my family, and I know that they were in college for 4 years of pre-med, then they also did med school, then they went and did their training within their specialty, plus their residency, and there's a lot of steps before you become an actual doctor. And then once you become a doctor, you have to stay up on continuing education to keep your licensing. You have to take more courses all the time. You have to stay up on current research. You have to know about current studies that are being done. You have to know about the newest prescriptions that are out there. There's a lot that goes into it. I mean, yeah, I'm going to trust the people that have the actual education and experience. So I think that there may be a very good reason why doctors and nurses would talk about these things, you know, since it directly relates to health. And as far as the rest of this, I'm not really sure how this relates to the original TikTok. The original TikTok simply said that if you have the access to enough food to become obese or morbidly obese, that's a privilege. And she's going on about weight stigma and fat phobia and what your peers think and what your family of origin thinks. That's not addressing the actual subject of the original TikTok, but I don't know, maybe she'll tie it all together at the end. Let's see.
They were all taught the exact same things at a very, very young age. And so we're raised to believe that this rhetoric around people in larger bodies is normal. And that it is normal to be afraid to be fat, and that it is normal to judge people who are in larger bodies and to believe that there is some inherent flaw in them.
Okay, but it doesn't sound, to me at least, that there was judgment, just an observation. And it sounds like she might be taking this a little personal, because just to say that something is a privilege is not a judgment, it's an observation. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but making an observation is definitely not the same as passing judgment. And we know that in order to gain weight, people have to be in a calorie surplus. So it would stand to reason that people within a calorie surplus have more access to food than, I don't know, people that might be starving and in a calorie deficit. right? I mean, I know that might seem like a big stretch or something, but just making an observation is not a judgment.
Something gluttonous, which is what is heavily implied in this video. And through weight stigma, we become the victims and perpetrators of this issue. And it's cyclical. We talk about it with our peers, we learn about it more, and it's reinforced when we go to the doctor, when we see things on television.
Okay, and again, why would your doctor be bringing up your weight? Could it be because it's related to your health? Doctors will also bring up if you smoke, because we know that that's directly related to your health. And we know that smoking used to be incredibly socially acceptable and promoted everywhere and just part of life. And over the years, that has definitely changed because we understand just how detrimental it is to people's health. So why would we want to promote something that we know is not good? We've already been down that road with smoking.
And then when we have children, we repeat the cycle. It is so deeply insidious, and it is not normal to feel this way. So
Okay, but is anti-smoking culture insidious? There's PSAs, there were after-school specials when I was a kid, there's warning labels on boxes, there are taxes and tariffs all over the place to try to put it out of reach for people. So would you call that insidious? Or would you call that trying to influence people's behavior that we know is detrimental to their health?
reach my heart out to this creator because in the video, she also mentioned that she sees herself as a person in a larger body. And so that internalized fat phobia is rough to live with. And I believe that so many of us do.
Okay, but is it internalized fat phobia if it's true? If you are a larger person and you say, hey, I'm a larger person, is that internalized or is that, again, just another observation? Because here's the thing that I had to figure out while I was in the middle of losing weight. Once I would come to realizations in my life, things that I knew I had to be aware of so that way I could hold myself accountable. If I held myself accountable to those things, there were a number of people who thought that I was going to try to hold them accountable to it, or that I was passing judgment on them, when in reality, I was just trying to be aware and hold myself accountable. So it almost sounds to me like this creator might be taking it a little personal, that the original creator called herself a larger woman, and again, I'm still not really sure what this has to do with people's access to food, which is what the original TikTok was talking about.
There is so much unlearning and continuous unlearning that we have to do to unpack the inherent fat phobia and weight stigma that we all hold inside of our heart, because it hurts us too.
And you know what else will hurt your heart? Super morbid obesity. It doesn't matter how much unpacking and unlearning I do. If I hadn't lost the weight, there's a real good chance I would have really hurt my heart by now. Could have given myself a massive heart attack. A very decent shot at that, actually, considering what I know with my family history. So, yeah, let's talk about the things that will hurt your heart. Because being obese, specifically morbid obesity, it's literally in the name, morbid obesity. It's gonna you. That's why it's in the name. So I'm not really sure what this response had to do with that original TikTok, because it seems to me like this creator here may have taken it slightly personally and doesn't understand what the original TikTok was saying. But let's go ahead and check out the next one and see.
I have a hot take for you. If you are someone who is able to access enough food to be obese or morbidly obese, you have privilege. No, that's probably a tough concept to understand, but you have privilege, especially over people that can't even afford food, okay? I'm not saying this to be mean. I just think that it's important that we get a little perspective on where we're at and actually how put down we are by society.
I'm gonna say this in the most simplest terms because number one, I'm losing my voice. First of all, there are many, many reasons why people are fat bitches. For example, yours truly, PCOS. I could look at a fucking donut and gain 10 pounds.
Okay, we know that's not how it works, right? You can't just look at food and then gain the weight. You actually have to ingest it. You actually have to consume it in order for you to gain the weight. I mean, I know that if you are looking at it, the temptation is going to be to eat it, but you still have to eat it. And look, I'm very well aware that there are conditions out there that can make it more difficult, that there are medications and all sorts of things, that this is a very nuanced thing. But I also understand, even with that, you still have to consume the calories. Your body doesn't just make fat appear. I mean, the law of conservation of energy already guarantees that. Things cannot just be made out of nothing. So you still have to consume those calories. And I understand full well, personally, I do. I have PCOS, but I also have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I have mast cell activation disorder. I have Raynaud syndrome. I have endometriosis. I have arthritis and a whole bunch of other things that I've got to contend with. And some of those things can make it more difficult for me to lose weight. It can make things more difficult for me to want to stay active and exercise. But just because it's more difficult doesn't mean it's impossible. And as a matter of fact, because I have those things, I understand full well that I need to take care of my body as best as I can, despite those things. Not just give up and say, well, I have these things, so therefore it is. No, I can do the best that I can do, despite being dealt a crappy hand. So I fully understand when chronic conditions and circumstances can make it more difficult. But just because it's more difficult doesn't mean it's impossible. So I can definitely understand having PCOS as well, but I do understand that you still can lose weight when you have PCOS.
Tell you this in Disney terms, okay? The most simplest terms. If you go to a cheapy resort where you're paying $100 a night to stay, okay? And you go to the cafeteria, you're gonna get burgers, french fries, and chicken nuggets.
Okay, so to that I gotta say that the cheap resort is $100 a night, and you're probably gonna stay multiple nights. You still need park tickets and money for souvenirs, food, walking around money. Plus you gotta get to Disney. Oh boy, I am not going to Disney anytime soon. Okay, so then let's go ahead and talk about the cafeteria food, because she's listing french fries, chicken nuggets, and cheeseburgers, right? What blows my mind with that is, I mean, well, quite frankly, the vast majority of the weight loss that I achieved, I did so while I was working at McDonald's. And when I was working at McDonald's, not only was I not making that much money, but I got free food there. So I wasn't making that much money and I couldn't turn down the free food, right? That meant I was eating there 2, 3, sometimes 4 meals a day. Plus then I would bring food home for my husband, and I mean, I was eating like that 4 or 5 days a week. Every day that I was working, I would eat like that because I, again, could not afford to turn down free food. Not even the least little bit. Because at that point, we were stretching every dollar, every penny, just to pay our bills. I mean, my husband and I were living in the cheapest apartment that we could find in the city. We drove the crappiest beat-up car that we paid cash for, so we did not have a car payment. A lot of times I would just walk places because I couldn't afford gas or bus fare. And so there were plenty of weeks that I recall we had maybe $20 or $25 to spend on groceries. And what do you think we were buying at the grocery store? I mean, not the healthiest of foods, that's for sure, but it definitely taught me about portioning, and it taught me about rationing my food, so that way if I had 5 days worth of groceries I needed to buy, that I didn't eat that up within 2 days and then go hungry for 3, that I actually kept to that and would have 5 days worth of food. So I learned to cook and eat incredibly cheap. I learned to go to the dollar stores or the discount grocers or whatever I could do to save any amount of money. Because if I had an extra 30 cents, I had to put that in my gas tank or put that towards a bill. So I fully understand that. But I also know that even when you're eating food that might not be the most healthy, if you're eating the right portion of it, you can still lose weight. And I mean, we can talk nutritionally in a separate conversation. And when it comes to people being overweight, that comes down to calories being consumed. And again, yes, I fully understand the difference in nutritional value. But I also know that if you are eating to what you should be with your calories, you can definitely lose weight on that food. And I mean, that is how I lost the vast majority of the 180 pounds that I've lost. I mean, I was eating at a fast food restaurant on average 15 times a week. just simply because I could not turn down the free food, but I was still able to lose weight while doing so. But let's go ahead and see how she's going to compare this.
If you go to the expensive Disney resorts where you're paying $1,000 a night to stay.
$1,000 a night? $1,000 a night? Are you kidding me? That means in like 3 or 4 nights, we would have the money for another car. I mean, it would be a cheap used car, but that would be a second vehicle for us. 3 or 4 nights at the expensive resort. Wow, it's just proof to me that there really are people that live on a totally different level than I can imagine. Wow, I was not expecting this TikTok to call me poor so violently. Wow, $1,000 a night. That has blown my mind more than anything else I've heard so far. Wow.
Do you know what's going to be in the cafeteria? Beautiful, healthy green bowls, little acai bowls. Okay, and they're gonna also charge those double the price.
Okay, yeah, but if you're paying the $1,000 a night as opposed to $100 a night, I think it's a pretty fair assumption that you can afford a little bit more. And then as far as the content of the food, okay, so grain bowls or acai bowls, you can still gain weight on those too. Just because they're, quote, healthy and the cheeseburgers and the chicken nuggets would be considered unhealthy, yeah, that's not going to determine whether or not you gain or lose weight. It's the portions. It's the amount of calories that you're consuming that's going to determine this. And this is something that I see repeated by a lot of people that I think may be well-meaning, but just don't fully understand nutrition. And I'm not saying I fully understand nutrition, but I do know that if you overconsume healthy foods, it doesn't matter how healthy they are, you can still gain weight off of that. So one example that I can think of right off the top of my head is olive oil. Everybody's been told how healthy olive oil is, so people will pour that on everything like that. So I've watched people pour that on like everything and not measure it, not anything, where a tablespoon of that will add an extra 110 calories, I believe. It adds a lot of calories real fast, especially if you're doing that to a lot of food. So say you add an extra couple hundred calories of olive oil, a lot of people won't even register that because they consider it to be a health food. So if we're going to label foods as healthy or unhealthy, we cannot forget that portion sizes still exist and very much matter. So another example of a food that has been labeled healthy that I can think of is granola. Granola is essentially a calorie bomb, and it's designed to be. I mean, when you understand the history of the food itself, it was made for hikers and people on the trail, people that needed to pack light and carry as much as they could, as light as they could. And so if you were able to pack a lot of calories in a very small amount, that was a very good thing for people that needed to pack light. However, that's not always a good thing as just like a topping on top of things. And that's what I see it be used as now because it's healthy, where in reality you might be adding a lot more calories than you realize because you have deemed it healthy. So again, it comes down to portion sizes. You can gain weight off of healthy food, you can lose weight off of unhealthy food. I understand the point that she's trying to make, that you'll get better quality food when you're paying more per night, which, I mean, I would really hope so. If you're paying an extra $900 a night, that you would get better quality food. But to believe that you can't lose weight on the cheaper end, well, that does kind of show me that a lot of people have bought into the marketing. The marketing of diet companies, the marketing of gyms, the marketing of a lot of companies. Let's be fair. This notion that you must pay to lose weight, that you must go on some diet program, you must buy this book, you must eat this special food that is going to cost an exorbitant amount of money, that you're going to have to go to a gym and hire a trainer, and that's why celebrities are able to do that because they have all the money to do so, right? I didn't spend a single penny to lose weight. Not a single penny. I mean, I guess technically you could count the clothing that I purchased while I was losing weight, but I mean, let's be fair. Clothing doesn't last forever. You are going to have to replace that regardless with just the passage of time. And especially while I was losing weight and I knew that I wasn't going to be in those clothes for a very long time, I bought the vast majority of my clothes up at the thrift store and would seek out the cheap days. So I know the thrift store by my house on Monday and Tuesdays, at least when I was going quite frequently, they would have half off on certain color tags, or maybe this color tag is 50 cents. And I would go in and clean up all the blue tags I could find that just so I could get 50-cent pieces of clothing, because I knew that I wasn't going to be in those clothes for very long. So I would go and maybe spend $20 on a garbage bag full of clothes. So I guess maybe you could count that. But again, I was going to have to replace clothes eventually anyway. But no, I did not have to spend money to lose weight. And it's this notion, because of all the marketing that we have seen over the years, that in order to do something, you must go and pay the gatekeeper. Whoever it has deemed to be, whether that's Weight Watchers or Jenny Craig. They've done a number on a lot of us with marketing, and it's very evident to me by how people talk about food. Because I've heard so many people over the years tell me, I would love to eat healthy, but I can't shop at Whole Foods. And I'm like, well, cool, me neither. I've never stepped foot in one, and I have no desire to. It's quite all right. But I can make the best choices in what is available to me. Even when I only had $20 or $25 per week at the grocery store, I still had to make the best choices that were available to me, whether that was going to be quantity that was going to see me through for the number of days I needed to eat, or whether that was what was on sale. I mean, I still had to make the best choices to make every dollar stretch in that instance. So I understand the point that she's trying to make, but I do fundamentally disagree with it. Just because something is more expensive doesn't mean it's better, doesn't mean it's healthier, and that if you don't spend the money on it, that you must somehow be getting something inferior. When in reality, we can still make the best choices that we can, regardless of our situations.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Goodbye, and I don't love you.
So I understand the point that she is trying to make, but I also understand from my experience that you can make the cheap option work for you as well. But let's go ahead and take a look at this last TikTok.
I have a hot take for you. If you are someone who is able to access enough food,
Healthism in 2024, not demure, not mindful. Understanding the different drivers behind food choices, very cute, very mindful. Remembering that weight alone does not indicate health status.
Okay, so I've heard of this before, and I believe it's called the social determinants of health. And look, I'm not going to say that there aren't other factors that determine your health, because of course there are. If you live in a place that's got poor air quality, that can really affect your health. If you don't have clean drinking water, that can really affect your health. Of course, these things matter. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of these and see what they say. Okay, so we have education, job status, family support, income, access and quality healthcare, and your housing. Now we have tobacco use, diet, exercise, alcohol use. Let's go ahead and just kind of take a look at this. Oh, and of course, genetics, because you can't ever mention anything about health without genetics. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Okay, genetics. Yeah, you don't really have control over that. Access and quality healthcare. You may have a little bit of control over that, depending on if you get to pick your plan at work, but other than that, most of us are kind of stuck with what they offer for insurance, who the closest doctor is that takes patients, stuff like that. So that's not always easy for people to change. Education, job status, family support, and income. Yeah, definitely not always easy to change or completely not able to change. I mean, if your family doesn't support you, you probably aren't going to be able to change that. And then your housing, I mean, shoot, have you looked at housing recently? I couldn't change my housing if I wanted to. I mean, at this point, we would pay at least double in rent to get anything similar to what we have. So yeah, that's definitely not always easy to change. And then let's go ahead and take a look at the others. Oh, tobacco use? Yep, you can definitely change that. Not going to say it's easy if you smoke to quit, but you can definitely change that. Diet? Yep, you can definitely change that. Exercise? Yep, you can change that. And again, I understand if you can't afford going to a gym. I mean, you can go for walks. You can try to just be more active in other ways that don't cost any money. That's how I've always done it, quite frankly. Alcohol use? Yep, absolutely. You can control that. So at least just taking a look at this list right here. I mean, I might not be able to change my income or family support or my housing, but I can choose what I put in my grocery cart. And again, I have been there where I had very little money to put towards groceries, and I had to be incredibly careful about what I was spending my money on. But I also knew that the choices that I made were going to directly impact that. That if I had $20 to spend on groceries for a week, I could get enough food that was going to last me for what I needed it to, or I could blow that on 1 or 2 meals at a fast food restaurant and then leave myself hungry for the next 3 days. So I do understand that there are a lot of factors to this, but I understand just taking a look at this, what you are able to control. And if there's even a little portion that you can control, why wouldn't you want to give yourself the best odds? And then the other thing, when people want to bring up systemic issues like these social determinants of health, I understand that there is a lot of nuance and a lot of variables that do come into play with this. But this is the thing that I just can't wrap my mind around. When we admit that there are systemic issues, we are admitting that the system is flawed. And so I'm just genuinely curious why we should sit around and wait for this flawed system to come along and save us. Why we wouldn't try to do all we could with what we could. And that, yes, I understand we might not be able to change the environment around us, but we can change our own environment as much as we can, and not just wait for some messed up system to suddenly right itself and come save you. We have to learn to save ourselves while that system is messed up. So that's the one thing I've just never been able to wrap my mind around with this.
Very cute, very mindful. Understanding the social determinants of health, very demure, very mindful. If you want to know the secret to healthy eating, all you have to do is remember, eat me.
Okay, as someone who grew up in the 80s and 90s, I really hope it's going to mean something different than how we used to use it.
Very demure, very mindful.
Okay, let's go ahead and read that. It says, if you want to know the secret to healthy eating, just remember, eat me, which is an acronym for energy, access, time, money, and education. Okay. Really not sure what that is supposed to contribute to this. I'm truly not. Because none of this negates the original TikTok, that if you have access to enough food to become obese or morbidly obese, that is a privilege as compared to someone who does not have that food. I'm just genuinely curious why this is such a difficult concept for people to understand. Because at least the way privilege has been explained to me, I mean, I understand that as a white person, I do have white privilege. And that is neither a good nor bad thing. It's just a thing. And that means that despite all the stuff that I've gone through in my life, I understand that my race didn't make it worse for me. That's all it means. And that if I weren't white, the things that I have gone through could have been much worse. I mean, it's just an observation. It's not a judgment. So I'm not really sure why everyone's getting so bent out of shape over that, because it is just an observation. So when I see people take an observation and then take it personally, typically that's the kind of responses I would see. Something that is more emotional and not actually responding to what the original person said. It's about weight stigma or fat phobia, or that evidently if you spend more money, you'll get better food. But maybe that's just me. Let me know down in the comments below. What do you think? Do you think that having access to enough food to become obese or morbidly obese is a privilege? Or is that just a statement rooted in fat phobia? Let me know down below. I'm genuinely curious and I love reading all of your responses. That is where we will leave things today. I thank you so much for joining me. Please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you all in the next one. Bye! Oh, right, and the lip gloss. Thanks, kitten. Well, how about we not choke me there? I'm fighting a losing battle here between my lip gloss and cat fur.